The 4th of July was just a few days away, and the cabin needed to be provisioned. Unlike most homes, there isn't a road leading to our cabin. There are no delivery trucks, no propane service, no grocery store around the corner. Everything that keeps the cabin running has to cross the water or be hauled in on our backs. Food, drinking water, fuel, and on this trip, 3 30-pound propane cylinders and 2 20-pound propane cylinders to keep the refrigerator, hot water heater, cooktop, and clothes dryer running throughout the holiday. That presented a challenge. Our Sea-Doo Explorer Pros are remarkably capable machines, but they weren't designed to carry 3 propane cylinders, water, groceries, and supplies all at the same time. So I did what engineers tend to do. I improvised. A couple of large plastic storage totes were strapped to the cargo platforms, and life jackets and flotation vests became padding to cushion the propane cylinders. It wasn't exactly a factory accessory. It looked more like something assembled in the Frankenstein lab. The marine forecast called for calm winds, and I remember thinking this would be the perfect opportunity to test my new cargo system, because we'd have a nice, smooth ride. Apparently, no one shared that forecast with Frederick Sound. All that weight concentrated on the stern, my Sea-Doo began porpoising its way across the sound. Every wave lifted the bow and slammed it back down again, sending another jolt through my carefully engineered collection of plastic tote straps and optimism. Somewhere out there, in about 600 feet of water, my engineering brain decided this would be an excellent time to calculate the density of propane cylinders. If my cargo system failed, would they float, or would they head straight for Davy Jones's locker? After a few mental calculations, I convinced myself that they were buoyant enough to float. Fortunately, though, the cargo system survived the crossing, and soon the cabin came into view. While I stayed with the Sea-Doos, Darcy hiked up the trail to retrieve the ATV. Then came my unplanned field experiment. While unloading, I tripped on a submerged rock, and one of the propane cylinders slipped from my hands and quietly floated away. I stood there for a moment, partly because I'd just dropped the propane tank into the seawater, but happy because my calculations had been correct. Had I been wrong about either the cargo system or the buoyancy calculation, Davy Jones would have had enough propane to host his own 4th of July barbecue. After we dropped off the materials, we headed for home, and the crossing was almost glass calm. Had we waited one more hour before leaving our house for the cabin, the entire trip would have been smooth. Sometimes that's Alaska. You prepare as carefully as you can, make the best decisions you have with the information available, and then accept that the sea still gets the final vote. Preparing a remote cabin isn't simply about hauling supplies across the water or on your back. Every meal we'll share, every hot shower after a long day, every cup of coffee on the deck overlooking Frederick Sound begins with someone willing to make this journey. Now we could turn our attention to the reason we'd come before the 4th of July weekend. It was now time to enjoy the cabin over that holiday. Last winter had delivered record snowfall across southeast Alaska. The cabin weathered it well, but the chimney hadn't been quite so fortunate. Heavy snow sliding off the roof had twisted the chimney cap and damaged part of the stack. With chimney smoke wafting onto the metal roofing where we gather our water for the cabin, it really needed to be repaired. Unless, of course, we wanted to taste wood smoke in our water. So we hopped into the Bronco and headed for the trailhead. The drive to the trailhead provided our first surprise of the weekend. Rounding a corner, we spotted a black bear, casually walking down the road as though it had all the time in the world. We stopped for a moment, watched him disappear into the forest, and then continued on our way. The hike into the cabin is about 3/4 of a mile, but it is an arduous hike through muskeg and forest sections, most of it steeply downhill. Once we reached the cabin, we saw black-tailed deer on the beach. Soon after, I gathered the tools and looked up at the chimney. Then I looked at the ladder. To get to the chimney, I had to lean the ladder more horizontally than it was safely designed for. Let's just say the ladder access situation inspired considerably less confidence than the dilapidated state of the chimney. After some thought, some rope, a couple of wooden braces, and a post cut from the forest, it was ready for the high wire act. I carried it over to the cabin. I leaned it up against the roof line and gave it what engineers refer to as a careful visual inspection and started climbing. All the while, Darcy remained safely on the ground. At least one of us was making good life decisions. As I worked my way up the ladder, replacing the damaged chimney cab and making the necessary repairs, Darcy quietly took a picture. I think she was also checking my life insurance policy. She later admitted she waited to send those photos to anyone until she knew I hadn't fallen to my death. Fortunately, both the chimney and the ladder and I survived the experience. Now that the repairs were finished, the cabin was once again ready to be heated by the wood stove without our water tasting like wood smoke. I've noticed something over the years. Remote cabins have a way of changing your relationship with work. Back home, repairs often feel like interruptions. Out here, they're part of belonging to wilderness. Every roof that's patched, every chimney that's repaired, they're small investments in a place that has given us far more than we've ever given it. What also stays with me is remembering who was standing at the bottom of the ladder, ready to help, ready to laugh, and apparently ready to notify everyone only after confirming I had survived my high wire act. With the chimney repaired, the work was finished. For the first time since arriving in Alaska, there was nowhere we needed to be and nothing that had to be fixed. So we launched the kayaks. There's something about trading a Sea-Doo for a kayak that changes the pace of the day. The engines that carried us here a few days ago had done their job. Now it was time to let the place set the rhythm. The water was nearly still as we paddled away from shore. And not long after, we heard it, the unmistakable sound of a whale exhaling. A tall white blow rose into the morning air, followed by the broad, dark back of a humpback slipping quietly beneath the surface. Then another and another. For the next hour, or whatever time felt like out there, we found ourselves surrounded by whales surfacing again and again, sometimes remarkably close to the kayaks. Each breath echoed across the water. Each surfacing reminded us just how large these animals really are. Darcy, displaying considerably more common sense than me, chose to stay closer to shore where the water was shallower and the whales seemed less interested in surfacing. Meanwhile, I found myself in deeper water, watching one whale after another appear nearby. Once again, it occurred to me that Darcy consistently makes better decisions than I do. Based on the latter situation, I was certain she had already checked that my life insurance premiums were paid, so she seemed less concerned about my situation. Eventually, the whales continued on their way, and so did we. A little while later, we watched a commercial crab boat stop to pull its pots. While we had come seeking quiet and wildlife, they were simply doing what generations before them had done, earning a living from these same waters, but different reasons, same ocean. Then we turned our kayaks back toward the cabin. One of the gifts of a kayak is that it changes your relationship with distance. In a motorized boat, you're often thinking about where you're going next. In a kayak, you're more likely to notice where you already are. The Sea-Doos gave us provisions for this place. Our feet gave us access to the cabin over the trail. The kayaks gave us permission to experience it. Perhaps that's why memories that stay with us aren't always measured in miles traveled or fuel burned. They're measured in quiet moments, the sound of a whale taking a breath, the ripple from a paddle, and sharing those moments with someone who, more often than not, makes better decisions than you do. Unfortunately, it was time to leave. The cabin was ready, the propane tanks were full, the chimney was repaired. Our part for now was finished. Just when we thought the trip couldn't surprise us one last time, a humpback whale launched itself completely out of the water.
The whale doesn't want us to leave. It's the same one that was playing out in front of our kayaks. Are you happy that I am carrying out my own pack?
Yes, it's probably filled with toilet tissue.
It's at least cute. Let's see yours. Oh, his is kind of heavy. Nanny's leaving the cabin. It's always a sad day. Dog's taking the lead.
If you ask people about this trail, many will tell you it's simply something to endure. It's muddy, it's uneven, and very steep in places. The muskeg seems to go on forever. The destination is the vehicle parked at the trailhead. As we climbed the trail towards the trailhead, I found myself thinking about how much this hike resembles life itself. Most of us spend our lives focused on reaching the next destination, the next job, the next accomplishment, the next milestone. Our eyes stay fixed on the end of the trail, convinced that's where the reward will be. And the distance between is something to overcome. But this hike has taught me something different. When I slow down enough to notice what's between the beginning and the end, the journey becomes richer. Fresh moose tracks pressed into the mud, tiny orchids and wildflowers blooming in the muskeg, the countless shades of green that somehow never look quite the same twice. Sunlight filtering through old-growth forest. Conversations with Darcy. None of those things moved me any closer to the parking lot, but they made the walk infinitely more worthwhile. I don't know, perhaps life works that way. The destination still matters, but so do all the small moments we would have missed if we'd been in too much of a hurry to notice them. On my good days, I can remember this lesson. On my bad days, I need to remember this lesson.